Nigeria's independence in 1960 was greeted with hope, yet beneath the jubilation lay deep cracks. The country was a fragile union of diverse peoples, the House of Fulani in the north, the Yoruba in the west, and the Igbo in the east. British colonial rule had lumped together over 250 ethnic groups, prioritizing administrative convenience over national unity. The regional political parties reflected this divide: the Northern People's Congress, NPC, the Action Group, AG, and the National Council of Nigerian Citizens, NCNC. Tensions escalated when the 1964 federal elections were marred by accusations of rigging. Violence erupted in the west, while in the north, ethnic suspicion brewed against the eastern Igbos, who were dominant in the civil service and trade. By January 1966, Nigeria was a fragile state teetering on chaos. On January 15, 1966, a group of young military officers staged Nigeria's first coup d'état. Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nziagwu, alongside others, assassinated leading politicians, Prime Minister Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Ahmadu Bello, and Ladoke Akintola. Though the coup failed to seize full power, it succeeded in shattering the illusion of national unity. Major General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi, Nigeria's most senior officer, assumed control. For many Northerners, however, the coup appeared an Igbo conspiracy, since most of the slain leaders were Northerners and Yorubas, while top Igbo figures were spared. The seeds of distrust deepened. Ironsi moved quickly to centralize Nigeria. In May 1966, he issued Decree No. 34, abolishing federalism in favor of a unitary system. To the north, this confirmed fears of Igbo domination. Just weeks later, on July 29, 1966, northern officers struck back in a bloody counter-coup. Ironsi was killed in Ibadan, and Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, a young northern officer, emerged as Nigeria's new head of state. This second coup triggered massacres across the north, where Igbo civilians became targets. Tens of thousands were slaughtered in waves of ethnic cleansing. Survivors fled east in droves. By late 1966, the eastern region under Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu became a refuge for Igbos escaping violence. Trains, lorries, and roads were filled with desperate families fleeing death. In towns like Kano, Kaduna, and Zaria, mobs hunted Igbos. The federal government seemed powerless to stop the killings. The East's confidence in Nigeria collapsed. In Enugu, Ojukwu struggled with his next move: should the East remain in a hostile Nigeria or secede? In January 1967, Nigerian leaders met in Aburi, Ghana, under the mediation of General Ankara. There, Gowon and Ojukwu agreed on a loose confederation, granting wide autonomy to the regions. Back home, however, Gowon's advisors opposed the deal, insisting it would cripple Nigeria. The federal government backtracked, leaving Ojukwu disillusioned. The chance for peace slipped away. In May 1967, Gowon announced the creation of 12 new states, dismantling the powerful eastern region. For Ojukwu, this was the final straw. On May 30, 1967, he declared the independence of the Republic of Biafra. The jubilant crowds in Enugu hailed their new nation, believing freedom had finally come. Nigeria, however, would not accept secession. The stage was set for war. On July 6, 1967, federal troops crossed into Biafra. The Nigerian Civil War had begun. The initial battles saw Nigerian forces advancing into Nsukka and the Midwest. But Biafran troops, though poorly equipped, fought with determination. Within weeks, Colonel Victor Banjo led Biafran units on a daring offensive westward, almost reaching or in present-day Ondo State. Lagos panicked, but Gowon's forces regrouped and pushed them back. Nigeria imposed a naval and land blockade on Biafra. By late 1967, food and medicine became scarce. The blockade strategy aimed to starve Biafra into submission. Images of starving children with swollen bellies and hollow eyes shocked the world. Caritas, the Red Cross, and other relief agencies began airlifting supplies into Biafra at night. Yet, the suffering only deepened. Hunger became Biafra's deadliest enemy. Despite the blockade, Biafra displayed ingenuity. Engineers at the Research and Production (RAP) unit built homemade weapons, armored vehicles called Ojukwu, and even refined crude oil. Radio Biafra, broadcasting from Enugu and later Umuahia, rallied morale with the voice of Ojukwu promising victory. The people clung to hope, convinced that international recognition would soon come. Biafra's plight drew global attention. France, Côte d'Ivoire, Gabon, and Tanzania recognized Biafra. France covertly supplied arms, while Portugal allowed its island of São Tomé to be used as a base for relief flights. However, Britain and the Soviet Union firmly backed Nigeria, supplying weapons and diplomatic cover. The United States remained officially neutral, though American churches mobilized humanitarian aid. The war became not just Nigerian but global, entangled in Cold War politics. In October 1967, Nigerian troops captured Enugu, Biafra's capital. Ojukwu moved his headquarters to Umuahia. The loss of the capital was a heavy blow, yet Biafra continued to resist. The war, initially expected to last weeks, was dragging into months, then years. When Biafran forces invaded the Midwest in August 1967, they briefly occupied Benin City. But federal troops counterattacked, retaking the region. In Asaba, during the federal reoccupation, one of the war's darkest tragedies occurred. Hundreds of Igbo men and boys were rounded up and executed. The massacre left deep scars, remembered as a symbol of the war's brutality. By 1968, the conflict had settled into a grinding war of attrition. Towns like Onitsha became battlegrounds, changing hands multiple times. Nigerian forces slowly encircled Biafra. The blockade tightened, famine worsened, and yet Biafran soldiers fought on, often barefoot and with limited ammunition. Women and children bore the heaviest burden, many reduced to eating roots and lizards for survival. Both sides waged propaganda wars. Nigeria promised no victor, no vanquished, while portraying Biafra as rebellious. Biafra, in turn, framed the struggle as genocide against the Igbo people. The images of starving children broadcast worldwide became powerful tools of sympathy. Biafra may have been losing on the battlefield, but it won the war of global conscience. Humanitarian relief flights turned into a war of their own. Pilots risked their lives landing in Uli airstrip, Biafra's lifeline. At night, planes carried food, medicine, and sometimes weapons. The Nigerian Air Force attempted to bomb the strip, but it remained operational. Each successful landing kept Biafra alive, prolonging the war. By late 1969, Nigeria intensified its offensive. Biafra, now reduced to a sliver of territory, struggled to survive. General Obasanjo, commanding federal forces, launched Operation Tailwind in January 1970. Umuahia fell, and Biafra's defenses collapsed. On January 9, 1970, realizing the end was near, Ojukwu fled to Côte d'Ivoire, leaving his deputy Philippe Effiong to negotiate surrender. For many Biafrans, it was a moment of betrayal, yet also one of inevitability. On January 12, 1970, Effiong announced Biafra's surrender. In Lagos, Gowon declared the war over, promising, no victor, no vanquished. The guns fell silent after 30 brutal months. But Nigeria was deeply scarred. The war left over 1 million dead, most from starvation. Survivors returned to ruins, displaced families, and bitter memories. Though Gowon's government launched a reconstruction, rehabilitation, and reconciliation program, many Igbos struggled with the loss of property, livelihoods, and trust in Nigeria. The Nigerian Civil War remains a defining moment in the nation's history. It exposed the dangers of ethnic mistrust, the fragility of post-colonial states, and the devastating impact of war on civilians. Generations later, the war still echoes in Nigerian politics, identity, and memory. It was a story of ambition and fear, of resilience and suffering, of a nation at war with itself, and a reminder of the price of disunity.